Why do we do it? Why, in the face of failure, is our first, almost primal instinct to look outwards. We scan the horizon of our lives, searching for a person, a circumstance, a system to which we can anchor the heavy weight of blame. At work, a project fails, and immediately our minds construct a detailed report how the marketing team dropped the ball, or how leadership failed to provide adequate resources. In our personal lives, a relationship falters, and we meticulously catalog the faults of the other person, their insensitivities, their lack of effort, their fundamental flaws. It's a defense mechanism as old as humanity itself. A shield we raise to protect our fragile egos from the sharp sting of accountability. We tell ourselves a story, a comforting narrative where we are the competent protagonist, tragically thwarted by the incompetence or malice of the world around us. But what if that story, that comforting shield, is the very thing holding us back? What if the constant act of deflecting responsibility is the single greatest obstacle to our growth, our success, and our ability to win? This isn't a new question, but two men, Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin, were forced to find an answer in an environment where the stakes weren't just a missed promotion or a bruised ego, but life and death itself. They weren't philosophers in an ivory tower. They were U.S. Navy SEAL officers, leading men in the most violent and chaotic urban battlefield of the 21st century. And it was there, amidst the dust and fire of Ramadi, Iraq, that they stumbled upon a truth so simple, yet so profoundly powerful, that would not only revolutionize military leadership, but also provide a universal blueprint for success in any endeavor. They discovered that the answer to that universal question of blame wasn't found by looking outward at all. It was found by looking in the mirror. To truly understand the weight of their discovery, you must first understand the world that forged it. Imagine, for a moment, the city of Ramadi in 2006. It wasn't just a city. It was the epicenter of the Sunni insurgency in Iraq, a place U.S. military leaders had dubbed the most dangerous city on earth. This was not hyperbole. The streets were a labyrinth of improvised explosive devices, a deadly garden where a single misstep could mean oblivion. Snipers nested in the skeletal remains of bombed-out buildings, their unseen eyes a constant, terrifying presence. Every corner, every alleyway, every closed door held potential for a sudden, brutal ambush. Into this cauldron of violence walked Task Unit Bruiser, the SEAL Task Unit led by Willink and Babin. Their mission was to support U.S. Army and Marine units trying to reclaim the city from al-Qaeda insurgents. But the enemy was only one part of the equation. The operational environment was a chaotic symphony of overlapping interests and competing forces. You had U.S. Army soldiers, U.S. Marines, and fledgling units of the Iraqi Army, all operating in the same dense urban battle space. Communication was a constant struggle. A simple plan could become a tangled mess of misinterpretations as it passed through different chains of command. Friendly fire, the soldier's ultimate nightmare, was not a distant possibility. It was an ever-present threat. The complexity was suffocating. Imagine trying to coordinate a delicate surgical procedure while 3 other surgical teams are working on the same patient, in the same operating room, without a shared language or a unified plan. That was Ramadi. It was an environment that naturally bred frustration and blame. When an operation went sideways, it was seductively easy to point a finger. The Army unit didn't hold their sector. The Marines moved too early. The Iraqi soldiers weren't properly trained. These weren't just excuses. They were often factually true, but they were also useless. Blaming another unit didn't bring back the dead. It didn't secure the objective, and it certainly didn't make the next operation any safer. It was a vicious cycle of failure and finger-pointing, and Willink and Babin were living in the heart of it, watching good men pay the price for this systemic dysfunction. They were facing the ultimate leadership challenge. How do you create order from chaos? How do you build a winning team when the very environment seems designed to tear you apart? The old models of leadership, the ones they had read in textbooks, simply weren't enough. They needed something more, something radical. They just didn't know what it was yet. The breakthrough came, as it so often does, from the ashes of a near catastrophe. It was during a major operation, a sprawling, multi-pronged effort to clear a volatile enemy stronghold. The plan was intricate, a complex ballet of moving parts involving Willink SEALs, an Army unit, and Iraqi soldiers. In the pre-dawn darkness, the mission kicked off, but almost immediately, the symphony descended into a cacophony. A firefight erupted, but the direction of the incoming rounds was wrong. It wasn't the distinct crack of an enemy AK-47. It was a familiar, gut-wrenching sound of American M4 rifles. In the terrifying confusion of urban combat, a friendly fire incident, a blue-on-blue, had occurred. One Iraqi soldier was killed and several other men, including one of Willink's own SEALs, were wounded. Miraculously, a full-blown massacre was averted, but the mission was a catastrophic failure. The aftermath was thick with tension. In the debriefing room, the air was heavy with unspoken accusations. Every leader from every unit involved was present, their faces grim. This was the moment for the blame game to begin. The Army platoon was in the wrong position. The Iraqi soldiers had moved without orders. The SEALs' communication had been unclear. There were a dozen different threads of blame that could be pulled, a dozen different ways for Jocko Willink, as the overall commander on the scene, to deflect responsibility. But he didn't. As a superior officer began to question him, preparing to dissect a failure and assign fault, Willink cut him off. He stood up and said words that would change everything. There is only one person to blame for this, and that is me. I am the commander. I am responsible for the entire operation. I will explain what I did wrong and what we are going to do to fix it. A stunned silence fell over the room. The tension didn't just dissipate. It was obliterated. The defensive postures melted away. The finger-pointing stopped before it could even begin. In that moment, Willink wasn't just accepting blame. He was seizing control of the situation. By claiming total ownership of the failure, he prevented the team from tearing itself apart with recriminations. More importantly, he gave himself the power to fix the problem. If it was someone else's fault, he was a victim. But if it was his fault, he was in the driver's seat. He then proceeded to dissect his own plan, his own failures in communication, his own assumptions that had proven false. As he did, something remarkable happened. The other leaders in the room, their own egos no longer under threat, began to chime in, not with accusations, but with their own admissions of fault. The Army leader admitted he hadn't fully understood the plan for his sector. The SEAL platoon chief admitted he hadn't confirmed the location of the Iraqi soldiers. The blame wasn't being passed around. It was being shared, owned, and analyzed. This was the birth of extreme ownership. It is a simple, brutal principle that the leader is responsible for everything in their world. Not some things, not most things. Everything. Every success, every failure. Every mistake made by every person on their team. There are no excuses. There is no one else to blame. When you embrace this mindset, the world shifts. You stop seeing problems as external forces acting upon you and start seeing them as challenges you must solve. It is the ultimate form of empowerment because it grants you control over your own destiny. But as this new philosophy began to take root within the task unit, a new and complex problem emerged. Jocko Willink could take ownership for a mission in the debriefing room, but what about in the middle of a firefight? When he wasn't there? What happens when the plan, any plan, inevitably makes contact with the enemy and starts to fall apart? A leader who takes extreme ownership, but also micromanages every decision creates a fatal bottleneck. If the team is paralyzed, waiting for orders from the top for every minor adjustment, they will be outmaneuvered and destroyed. The initial application of extreme ownership, while revolutionary, was incomplete. It addressed what happened after the fact, but it didn't fully solve the problem of real-time adaptation on a chaotic battlefield. The deeper truth was revealed during another high-stakes mission. A SEAL assault team was tasked with seizing a building, but as they approached, they found their planned entry point was blocked, barricaded from the inside. The original plan was now useless. On the radio, the junior officer leading the assault team quickly explained the situation to his commander, Leif Babin, who was positioned in an overwatch position nearby. The temptation for Babin, as the senior leader, was to dictate the next move. He had a better overall view of the battlefield and more experience. He could have ordered them to breach a specific window or move to an alternate door. But he didn't. Instead, He simply asked the junior leader on the ground, "What do you recommend?" There was a brief pause, and then the young officer laid out a clear, concise, and effective new plan. "We'll shift to the west, breach the third window, and flow in from there." Babin's response was immediate. "Do it." The team executed flawlessly, seized the building, and the mission was a success. What Babin understood was that the young leader on the ground, the man at the point of friction, had better situational awareness and a more immediate grasp of the tactical problem than he did. To have overridden him would have been to ignore the best information available. This incident crystallized a second crucial principle: decentralized command. This is the idea that everyone on the team must be empowered to lead. It's the understanding that no single leader can manage all the complexities of the modern battlefield or the modern marketplace. Decision-making authority must be pushed down the chain of command to the lowest possible level. But this isn't simply about delegation. It's about ensuring that every single person on the team, from the most senior commander to the most junior SEAL on the ground, understands not just what they're doing, but why they are doing it. They must understand the overall mission, the commander's intent. When people understand the why, they can adapt and make their own smart decisions when the plan inevitably goes wrong, without having to ask for permission. This was the necessary counterbalance to extreme ownership. The leader takes absolute ownership of the mission, but they exercise that ownership by empowering their team to lead and make decisions within their own spheres of influence. The true aha moment, the grand synthesis, came when Willink and Babin realized that these two principles weren't separate concepts at all. They were inextricably linked, a powerful, self-reinforcing loop that, when combined, created a culture of unparalleled effectiveness. It was a symbiotic relationship. Extreme ownership from the senior leader is a foundational act of trust. When a leader stands up and says, "The failure is on me," it creates a safe environment for the team. Subordinates are no longer afraid to admit mistakes or raise concerns, because they know they won't be thrown under the bus. This trust is the essential precondition for decentralized command. You cannot and will not empower someone you don't trust. But because the leader has created this high-trust environment, they can confidently push authority and decision-making down the chain. And this is where the magic happens. Once the authority is pushed down, the junior leaders, now empowered to make decisions, must themselves adopt extreme ownership over their small piece of the puzzle. The SEAL platoon chief leading the assault on a building now owns that building. He is responsible for everything that happens within that limited scope: the plan, the contingencies, the welfare of his men, the success of his specific task. He, in turn, must ensure his fire team leaders understand the why of his plan, so they can make adjustments if they get separated. This cascades all the way down to the individual operator, who must take ownership of his gear, his shooting, his sector of fire. The result is not a team with one leader. The result is a team of leaders, all operating in alignment with the overall strategic goal. This unified theory is what they began to call the laws of combat, and they realized its application was universal. It wasn't about SEALs or combat. It was about human dynamics. It was a solution to the problem they had seen not just in Ramadi, but in every dysfunctional organization they had ever encountered. The blame game is a hallmark of a failing team. Its opposite, this culture of universal accountability, is a signature of a team that will win. The grand idea is that leadership is not a position you hold. It's a standard you live by. And true leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking charge and then empowering everyone around you to do the same. So we return to that initial universal question. When things go wrong, where do we look? The journey through the battle-scarred streets of Ramadi offers a clear and uncompromising answer. We look in the mirror. We start with ourselves. This isn't a call for self-flagellation or martyrdom. It's a call to reclaim the power and agency that we so often give away. The blueprint is simple, though it is not easy. First, you must embrace extreme ownership. The next time you face a challenge, a failure, a frustration at work or home, resist the urge to look for external blame. Instead, ask yourself the hard questions. What did I do to contribute to this? What could I have done differently to change the outcome? How can I own this problem and lead the way to a solution? This single shift in mindset is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Second, for those you lead, whether it's a corporate team, a family, or just a single person you are mentoring, you must practice decentralized command. Don't just give them tasks. Give them purpose. Explain the why behind the mission. Ensure they understand the strategic goal, and then trust them. Give them the freedom to own their part of the plan and make decisions. Check your ego at the door and empower them to lead. Understanding these principles is the first step, but the real change comes from action. It comes from the difficult daily practice of choosing responsibility over excuses, of choosing to lead even when you don't have a title. This is more than just a leadership tactic. It's a philosophy for living a more effective and empowered life. If this journey and these ideas resonate with you, if you feel that call to a higher standard of accountability, then join a community that is committed to that same path. Subscribing isn't just about watching more videos. It's a declaration. It's a commitment to yourself that you are done with the blame game. You are ready to take ownership, ready to lead, and ready to win. The battlefield may change, but the path to victory always starts in the same place.